How did the same story inspire a horrifying documentary on Netflix? My God, what is wrong with me?
Why are you screaming?
I don't know. How did the same story inspire? Why am I screaming?
Why are you
Am I screaming? I don't know, because I need to give like energy in the video, no?
How did the same story
Okay, okay. Listen. How did the same story inspire a horrifying documentary for Netflix and one of the most hilarious movies on Life? No, see?
It's not
A
even on
single,
Lifetime.
a,
It's
s-
Hallmark.
no, it's Lifetime. It's Lifetime. I remember that. Duh, duh. No? How did the same story inspire a horrifying documentary on Netflix and one of the most hilarious Lifetime movies starring Lisa Rinna? We're going to talk about it today. Unknown Number Catfish is the newest documentary on Netflix that has everybody talking for good reason.
What's that reason, puta?
It follows a young girl who gets harassed to filth over the span of 2 years until they find out who the culprit is, and it turns out it was a shocking revelation. But before the documentary was released, they put out a movie in 2024, a Lifetime movie, heavily inspired by the story, which is just absolutely hilarious, ridiculous, badly done, terrible. Lisa Rinna as an actress, hello? Yes, sign me up. She had no emotion.
She couldn't have any
The
emotion.
entire film, she was just dead set on like, is she angry? Is she mad? Is she happy? Is she surprised?
Who knows?
Is she rooting for someone? Is she bullying her daughter to death?
knows?
We don't know.
Darling, it's not Botox. It's Paralox.
What's Parallax?
Paralyzes your face.
So today's gonna be a double feature. First, we're gonna get really angry, and then we're gonna get really happy. Starting off with Netflix's documentary, I did a little timeline of the events because there's a lot happening, and the documentary does kind of the same thing that the Natalia Grace documentary did, which is they give legitimacy to people who should really not get any airtime on a documentary being put out on Netflix for the whole world to see. It's that shock factor. They want you to like really get invested in the story, and then they pull the rug from under your feet and you're like, oh shit, these people are crazy. The story is set in a small town in Michigan, and I can relate to a small town like that. The only thing to do in a place like that is talk about other people, parents included. I remember the parents in my hometown. They all knew each other, and they were the ones spreading rumors that I, the only out gay teenager in the entire town, was giving out blowjobs to old men in the woods.
Fact.
And then my mom found out through her work colleagues that people were saying that. And that's sort of how I got outed without facts. Because I was, surprisingly, I was not giving out blowjobs to old men.
Lies. Lies.
I really wasn't. I really wasn't.
Okay.
I was very virginal until I left my
Virgin
hometown.
on being a whore.
Because I was like, who was I gonna be giving out blowjobs to? There was literally no one.
Old man.
Shut up. All this to say, this is a small town and everyone knows everyone, so it's like a very tight-knit community. Lauren Licari is our main victim. She was, I think, 14 at the time. This started off in 2020, in October. And she starts receiving these threatening messages telling her that her boyfriend is going to break up with her, that she's kind of worthless, and that lasts for a while until suddenly the messages stop. But then just under a year later, in September of 2021, the messages restart. It's almost like someone is stalking her. Someone knows all of the personal details about her life. Someone knows her whereabouts at all times. They know her friends. And these weren't like 2 or 3 messages a day. These were like 40 to 50 messages a day. Someone was obsessively living vicariously through cyberbullying this girl. The second wave of harassment, however, takes things further. They start attacking her physical attributes. They start telling her to off herself. And they also make highly suggestive sexual insinuations about her boyfriend, Owen. Owen also starts receiving messages, mostly telling him to break up with Lauren, telling him that she's a loser, that he can do way better. And whoever is sending these messages seemingly has sexual interest in Owen. And as soon as the kids were being interviewed for this documentary say that everybody talks about everybody, including the parents, it was very obvious that it was going to be a parent of some kid that was messaging Lauren. The harassment quickly became too much, so Lauren spoke to her parents, Owen spoke to his parents, and they went to the school to try and find out who was behind all of this harassment. And this essentially started a manhunt, a witch hunt, if you will, at the school. They were checking security cameras, they were checking everyone's whereabouts, they were interrogating kids who may have some motive to try and break them up, including a cousin of Owen and a friend of his. They also involved state police, who unsurprisingly did nothing of valuable because they didn't have the resources. And the messages kept coming, and blocking numbers was not really effective because whoever was messaging Lauren kept changing numbers or texting from a lot of different numbers. They even used like apps that make it seem like you received messages from someone else, like spoofing messages. Someone was really dedicating like their livelihood to making sure this girl had zero self-esteem. Eventually though, the state police contacted the FBI, who quickly got involved, and through their, their more techie advanced resources, they were able to pinpoint the origin of these messages to an IP address belonging to none other than Lauren's mother, Kendra. Now, this has not been a good year for Kendras out there. First, we had one obsessed with her therapist, and now we have one obsessed with wanting to make her daughter kill herself. The documentary also shows us like a bunch of the messages on screen that she was receiving, like unadulterated, and whoever was writing these it felt like they were either trying to emulate a teenager or trying to copy the way they talk, not necessarily authentic, which made me even more inclined to think it was a parent. And it was, just not the one that I thought it was.
Who did you think it was?
I thought it was the boyfriend's mom, because all of the texts were trying to break them up. They were like, Owen, you can do so much better. And then it was like, Lauren, you're such a loser. He doesn't deserve you. He's so much better than you. And knowing that it was the mother, it all kind of made a lot more sense, because the messages were really hitting at her deepest, darkest insecurities, almost like someone knew what would make her tick, what would send her over the edge, over the cliff. Cliff of love. So then in December of 2022, Kendra was arrested and she was charged, but she wasn't charged with everything she should have been charged, in my opinion. And this is where the story gets infuriating, because the messages weren't just directed at Lauren or Owen. There was a time during those 2 years where she was constantly being harassed. Yes, the harassment lasted for about 2 years, which is insane. Imagine for 2 years getting 100 daily texts telling you that you're a fugly loser and that you should off yourself. I'm laughing, it's not funny, but these kids really handled it very well. At one point during those 2 years, Owen and Lauren broke up because they had exhausted all possibilities except for changing phones and changing numbers. So they decided to break up. And when Owen started dating a girl from out of town over a summer, guess who also started receiving threatening messages? The new girlfriend. Almost like the person sending the messages had like a psychosexual obsession with Owen, who was at the time a child. He was like 14, 15. So when you think back that it was Kendra, Lauren's mom, sending all these texts, why was she sending Owen messages saying that she was gonna cream, saying that she wanted him to finger her? Like, really think about it.
Ew, that was the real life shit?
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
So Kendra was arrested and charged initially 5 counts, including 2 counts of stalking a minor, obstruction of justice, and using a computer to commit a crime. Because here's the thing, throughout the whole police investigation, Kendra was there, helping out and wanting to find who the culprit was. So essentially she was obstructing justice, but she was also stalking a minor, her own daughter, and her daughter's boyfriend. But then no charges were pressed. No charges were pressed over sexual harassment of a minor, which she very much did. She was then sentenced to spend 19 months to 5 years in state prison, and in August of 2024, a year later, she was released on parole. And to think that there's people in prison for possession of weed, yet this woman stalks her own child for 2 years and gets a few months. But here's what pissed me off. They show the body cam footage of Kendra's arrest, and you can really tell that this is a white woman in America because they go in with kitty gloves. They're like, Kendra, we have evidence that it's been you this entire time. And Kendra at first tries denying that she's the one who started. Remember that there was an initial wave of harassing text messages in 2020 that then stopped. So she denies having sent those texts, and instead she's only taking credit for the ones that started in 2021, which were arguably way worse. Right? Like initially it was just like, yeah, Owen's gonna break up with you. And then it was like, yo, ugly, you should kill yourself. And she's taking credit for the latter. uh, And then her daughter gets home and they're like, Lauren, we have to tell you something. It's been your mother. And she just begins disassociating. Like, how is this girl supposed to react knowing that her biggest bully of the past 2 years is the mother that's right next to her? And then her mom is allowed to stay in her vicinity, to hug her, to comfort her, almost like trying to shield her from the truth. She also asks the police if, like, people have to know if this is going to get out because her daughter is never going to be able to go to school again. And I'm like, they got the FBI involved, and you think they're just gonna go to your place and be like, yeah, we know it was you. Please stop, and then just leave. She wasn't even apologizing for what she did. She just seemed more afraid that the community was gonna find out that she was behind it all.
She is a narcissistic sociopath. And she's like, oh, but I don't want my poor daughter to suffer. Your daughter's been suffering at the hands of your messages for the last however many years. And then she's like, but please don't let this get out. It's nothing to do with protecting the daughter. She wants to protect herself.
And the fact that she's right next to her daughter, like being essentially arrested, and the police just allow her to hug her daughter, to stay like no handcuffs, no restraining her. They're just like, yes, we're just gonna have a very polite conversation about this woman who's an absolute sociopath, psychopath, whatever the right term is. Then they call the father and they tell him, look, we know who's been doing this. You need to come home. And then they tell him that it's his wife, and he wastes no time. He's like, I want you out of my house right now. Y'all need to take her away because I don't know what I'll do. The worst part is that they were in a lot of financial trouble at that point. They had to move houses like 4 times. Kendra had lost her job, but then told her husband that she got another job working from home online, and that was a lie. She was responsible for the family's finances, and she was taking care of none of that. So here you have Kendra with no job. Her daily occupation is cyberbullying her own daughter. She doesn't take care of the finances. They have to move over and over again to try and deal with the situation. They end up putting all of their belongings in a storage unit, and then they're not able to afford that one, and they lose a bunch of their personal belongings. I don't know how this man didn't just lunge at her, because I don't even know what possesses someone to get to that point. And then there's the why. Why did Kendra do this to her own daughter? Why would anyone do this to their own child? And Kendra's reasoning is as infuriating as it is funny. She says that she didn't send that first wave of messages, and she just restarted the trend. She started sending those messages so that she could try and find out who had sent the initial messages a year before. And it just got out of hand. She just, once she was in it, she was like, I can't stop now. I can't stop telling my daughter to kill herself now that I've told her 50 times over the past 2 weeks. I gotta keep it up, which makes no fucking sense. And I think it's like an accepted fact, though not proven, that she had sent the initial messages as well. Then she brings up her childhood trauma, saying that she was sexually assaulted when she was 17, and seeing her daughter slowly reach that age, she was afraid that her daughter would go through something similar. So I guess she decided, wait, before anyone can abuse my daughter like they abused me, let me abuse her first. I don't know, is it like foreplay for what she might go through in the future? Is like pre-gaming. You know how you do pre-drinks before you go to a party? Well, this was like pre-abuse. Before you go out into the world and you meet men, let's first introduce you to some real bullying from your own mother. That is her reasoning. I wish I was joking. She said, I was assaulted. So, I was scared that my daughter would go through the same. And I just wanted to find out who had sent those messages a year before. So I spent a year and a half sending her worse messages to somehow dupe the real perpetrator of the initial ones to somehow be found out. She wanted to escalate things so people would investigate. It makes no sense.
I was fat as a child, and my daughter was getting to the age where I became obese. And I didn't want her to get obese. So I force fed her fries and fat and lard and takeout food. And I forced her to become obese because I didn't want her to become obese.
Period. My daughter might get abused, so
let
let me get ahead of the trend and do the abuse instead.
Really worried my daughter's gonna get killed. So let me
Kill her
just
first.
kill her
Because
to
if
see
I
she can
kill,
survive it.
yeah, because if I kill my daughter first, then no one else is
no
going to
one
have the
else is gonna
chance
do it.
to traumatize her that
This
way.
makes sense.
It's keeping the trauma indoors within the bounds of our home. When your first bully in life is your mom or your dad, then it really sets you up for a brighter future. This is not to downplay someone's childhood trauma. Like, obviously she was abused, and that should come with heavy doses of therapy, right? Not heavy doses of bullying your own daughter. But it's the lack of accountability. It's the trying to justify your own actions because I was hurt. Therefore, you have to extend some sort of grace and understanding that my messed up brain felt like this was the only way to cope with the possibility of my daughter going through the same trauma that I did. But then none of this explains why she went after her daughter's boyfriend. None of this explains why she was being sexually suggestive with her daughter's boyfriend, who was a minor. None of this explains why she went after the kid's new girlfriend from out of town that had nothing to do with her daughter, right? If she didn't want her daughter to date Owen when they broke up, that should have been it. Like, Owen should have been left out of the conversation, but he wasn't. She kept it up. And when asked about it, oh no, she didn't say anything, but when asked about the kill yourself messages, she says that she wasn't afraid Lauren would do it, but offers no clear reason why. She's like, yeah, I don't know. I just knew that she wasn't going to kill herself. Outside parties obviously try to rationalize what would possess a woman to do this to her own child. And some people mentioned Munchausen by proxy. Essentially, she was bullying her daughter, keeping her self-esteem down so that her daughter would go to her for comfort. She would get closer to her mom. And this was the entire basis of the Lifetime movie that we're going to get into. Essentially, yeah, she was bullying her daughter because she wanted to be the savior in her life. She wanted to be the shoulder she could cry on. But other people have theorized that she had an obsession with this little boy, that she wanted him. There's a word for that. Pedophile. Isn't it a phebophile if it's not a child, it's a teenager? There's a comedian that did a joke, and essentially, like, he makes the distinction between a pedophile and a phebophile, and there's a difference. And then he ends it with, but it's really hard to explain this without sounding like a pedophile, which shouldn't really matter in this case. She's creepy. But what shocks me is that no charges of that nature were brought against her. The only charges was for stalking minors and obstructing justice and committing crimes with a laptop. And I don't know, I feel like if this had been a man, that man would be charged and put on a list, an offenders list. But I think the most heartbreaking thing is seeing her daughter at the end of the documentary saying that she still very much loves her mom. Her mom then reached out from prison, apologizing to her, basically love bombing her, doing exactly the opposite that she had been doing for 2 years. And even worse, and I think that we can blame Netflix for this, is that they allow Kendra to be interviewed. They allow Kendra to give her side of the story. They allow Kendra to talk about the case for the first half of the documentary that we don't know it was her. She's not featured that much, but she is featured enough that you're thinking, okay, it couldn't be her, otherwise she wouldn't be interviewed, right? You wouldn't think that they would just allow the perpetrator to say stuff like, yeah, we really wanted to find out who it was. Like, my daughter was in so much pain. We were desperate to get to the bottom of the truth. And it's like, it was you. Why is Netflix giving you the space and the time to present yourself as a reasonable human being, only to then reveal the plot twist and then still allow the mom, because now she's out of prison, she agreed to be on this documentary, still allow her to give her side of the story. But don't worry, she doesn't really humanize herself much. I think, if anything, she just shows how much of a manipulator and a pathological liar she actually is. I know that her mom wasn't allowed to be in contact with her daughter until she turned 18, but, since then, I think she is 18, and maybe they now have a loving mother-daughter relationship. So that's part one. And now let's go into the Lifetime movie that was heavily inspired by this real story, released in 2024, starring Lisa Rinna in Mommy Meanest. I watched this movie yesterday with my husband, and how to describe it? I don't know why or how, but it feels like it was produced by Megan McCain. It has that aura of, and it follows Mia, a 17-year-old student played by a 33-year-old actress. She used to be bullied as a kid. The kids threw pennies at her, so she decided to flip the tables on her bullies and started collecting the coins so she could donate them to an animal rescue. And she gathered $20,000. I just want to know how many pennies were thrown at this poor girl that she was able to donate $20,000. But the movie, basically, she gives a speech in front of the entire school how she overcame the bullying she suffered like a decade before, a few years before. And it goes down super well. Everyone's like, woo, she's a hero. And that gives her an in to hang out with the popular kids. Only problem is her mommy, played by Lisa Rinna, her name's Madeline, she doesn't seem too enthusiastic about her daughter having cool friends. Or maybe she is enthusiastic, or maybe she's slightly anxious, or maybe she's angry. Honestly, it's really hard to tell. Yeah, I've given the backstory of the pennies and how she collected $20,000 from pennies alone.
Wait.
The bruises on her body.
Was that like a fact? She actually collected $20,000 in pennies? Is that what it was?
No, it wasn't. Okay, so she says that they threw pennies at her and she started collecting them and decided to then donate that money to an animal rescue. She raised $20,000. They don't specify where that came from, so I'm just assuming it was just pennies.
Wow.
Imagine $20,000 worth of pennies.
200,000 pennies.
Depends on what kind of pennies there are being thrown. Is a penny always a cent? So 100 cents for $1. $20,000 times 100. Oh my, 2 million pennies? That poor girl must have so many bruises. Well, she's in her late 30s, so she's fine. This school is for young adults impersonating children. They're all in their late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah, they cast people in the late 20s, early 30s to play us.
They have full beards that they have to shave every time they're about to go on set, just so, we don't see the 5 o'clock shadow.
Apart from Lisa Rinna, who is 19. Lisa
Rinna. I don't know how they cast this woman as a suburban mom. I don't know any suburban mommy that can afford that much work. But work. And then Mia starts receiving bullying messages, calling her poor, calling her ugly, saying that she... thanking her for normalizing back fat. Some of the texts were fucking ridiculous.
What was my favorite? You should hire a dog collar from the pound.
They're not even good burns.
No.
I wonder who wrote those text messages. I'm going to put some here on screen
Lisa
just so
Rinna.
you can like...
Out of character.
They were like, Lisa, pretend that you're messaging your cast members from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. What would you tell them right now? Kyle Richards, thank you for normalizing back fat. Homeless, not toothless. Toothless, not homeless. We get a counter on screen of the amount of messages that she has received, and this really starts taking a toll on this middle-aged high schooler. So as the messages start flooding in, she becomes closer and closer to her mom, and the mom, surprisingly, starts getting more attention from men, from her colleagues at school. She starts slacking off in her job. Yes, Madeline is a teacher at school. She starts slacking off, but when they find out that it's all because of anonymous messages being sent, they're like, you know what? You don't even have to work because we know how tough it is going through the situation with your 50-year-old daughter. No, I'm joking. She's not 50. She's like in her late 20s.
She's 35.
And then we eventually find out who the perpetrator of these messages are. And in line with what happened in real life, the perpetrator is Madeline, played by Lisa Rinna herself. But like, she is committed to this, right? She has a Mossad operation in her closet. She has a bunch of phones on the floor. She has a laptop. Sometimes she puts a blanket over her to really hide from the closet.
I used to do that when I was like 14, but I wasn't sending messages.
No, I'm sure you weren't. You were probably in a closet. You really were in the closet.
I was
Damn.
hiding closet.
But before they find out it was Madeline, Madeline also starts texting her friends and starts framing her best friend and her boyfriend. And it's just like a cluster of events until eventually her daughter finds the Mossad operation in the closet under the bench. The way they do the third act is absolutely unhinged. Mia, the daughter, the 45-year-old victim, goes to her best friend, the 49-year-old student, and they concoct a plan. In the middle of the night, Madeline is asleep, and this friend calls Madeline and is like, I need to speak to you because I think that Mia is going to do something terrible to herself. Nothing can downplay the urgency of this call, except for the people having the phone call. They make it sound like the least urgent thing. And the mom is like, what? I don't know if she's surprised, if she's scared, if she's apprehensive. It's really difficult to tell. But she gets up and checks her daughter's bedroom, and she's not there. And the entire time that she's knocking at the door, she can't hear the shower running in the bathroom right behind her. But then she eventually checks the bathroom and she opens the curtain to reveal a message in red saying, "Mom, I know that you are my cyberbully." And the mom is shocked or not. Again, it's difficult to tell. But her daughter confronts her. It's the stupidest thing ever because the mom just goes from, I was trying to protect you, to you'd be nothing without me. Then we find out that it wasn't the mom that got a restraining order against her ex-husband. It was the ex-husband that got a restraining order against her. So like the mom was already cuckoo crazy. And as she's admitting everything to her daughter, turns out her daughter was on the phone to the police. And the mom is arrested, and she is really shocked and scared and just, I don't know what she's feeling, actually. It's impossible to tell. But the movie ends with the mom being released from prison. She posted bail. Someone posted her bail. And yeah, it's like, I don't even know what the purpose of this film was other than getting Lisa Rinna on that set and giving her an acting gig. I didn't even know that she was an actress. I mean, she's not.
She's not.
She's not. She's an icon. She's an icon in her own silly little way.
The highest paid person in that entire operation was whoever was doing her hair.
Oh yeah, I feel like Lisa Rinna had her personal beauty team on set. It was a true masterpiece of acting. I wonder when she's gonna get her Oscar. Soon, I hope. I think it's about time. So kids, if you're being cyberbullied by anyone, just remember, always suspect your parents. They might just be your first bullies ever. And I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like down below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That'd be rude. And comment down below. What infuriated you the most about either of the stories? I doubt that anyone has seen this Lifetime movie, but if anyone has, sound off. Okay, let me know. And yeah, over Kendra, can we just check in on the Kendras of our lives? They're not having a good time at the moment. They're really not. They're in crisis. The Kendra crisis, if you will, like KC. And until next time, stay safe, stay sane, stay stupid, and stay stuttering. Bye guys.